join the members to discuss all this. For their view from the Hill, Pamela Goldsmith-Jones is the Foreign Affairs Parliamentary Secretary. Conservative MP Erin O'Toole joins us, and Don Davies is an NDP MP from Vancouver. Welcome to you all. I want to get your thoughts first, Nathan. Was the clerk right that he doesn't have the trust and respect of the opposition parties?
You're speaking to me. Yeah, he called me Nathan Cullen, which I take as a compliment.
Nathan?
I think he has
not Nathan Cullen.
I think he did lose confidence of the political parties and many Canadians. You know, Mr. Wernick was revealed through Ms. Wilson-Raybould's testimony. Not only had been part of a campaign to pressure her with respect to her decision, he was referencing board meetings from SNC-Lavalin, taking calls from the chair of that board. There were a number of things that really called into question his behavior on the file, and I think he did the right thing today, and I appreciate his long public service, but it's really sad that he became embroiled in this scandal that the Trudeau PMO led us to. It's very similar to Mr. Jean, Daniel Jean, their national security advisor, who had a distinguished career as well until he was drawn into the India trip. So it's a train wreck right now of many people whose careers have been impacted by the way the Trudeau PMO handle things.
Okay. Now, you're Don Davies, right? You're not Nathan Cullen? All right. What do you think? I mean, he lays out a pretty compelling case. He says, I have to go because I don't have the confidence of the opposition. And he serves for whatever party wins the next election. You can't be in there being a referee on whether if there's interference or not, I guess.
Yeah, it was an honorable move, and quite frankly, it was the only move that was available to him. You know, a democracy is made up of a lot of moving parts, and one of them is having a professional, nonpartisan civil service. And as the head of the civil service, the clerk of the Privy Council, it's imperative that they maintain a distance from partisan politics. And I don't think anybody could have watched his testimony before the Justice Committee and come to any other conclusion than he was drawn very much into partisanship. It looked like he was defending the Prime Minister as opposed to working for the people of Canada. And you can't have that in our civil service. And, you know, I think he was right that no opposition parties could have confidence that he would be an impartial arbiter during the election after the behavior that we saw. And as Erin said, I thought one of the most disturbing things was the Attorney General's testimony that he threatened her, in her words, 3 times. And you know, I don't think a person can continue in that position.
Too partisan for the position, Pamela?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank Michael Wernick on behalf of the panel, of course, and all Canadians for 38 years of service. That's quite an accomplishment. I would also like to thank him in his parting comments about the importance of the sanctity of the upcoming federal election. It's something that this government has taken very seriously, and it's something that he recognized, I think, by this move, that all parties have to have confidence in that in October. And we are making distinct improvements on that above the previous government.
He had to go. Do you think he had to go because he lost the confidence or at least the impartiality?
In his words, those were his words, and I respect that. And I think he's done the gracious thing, the proper thing, and the accountable thing.
Don, what does this say about what's going on this scandal? I mean, this is the 4th insider to be tossed out. What does this tell you about the way this is going?
Well, I think it shows chaos. I think it's a really unseemly peek behind the curtains of some really, I think, disturbing behavior in the PMO and frankly in cabinet. I'm glad you used the word scandal. Like, you know, we have had 4 very, very pivotal senior people resign over this. And quite honestly, I think it's exactly what it looks like it is. You know, it was the Director of Public Prosecutions made a decision not to give SNC-Lavalin a deal. That went up to the AG. Enormous pressure was put on her. Partisan considerations were put to her. She resisted quite ethically, and when she wouldn't do their bidding, she was punished. And I think that's the clear narrative that's come out of this. And you know, I hear a lot of talk about the rule of law and how important that is to be respected. Well, those are words, but what I've seen here is a great deal of violation of those principles by the Prime Minister and this Liberal government.
Erin, top advisor to Justin Trudeau, top bureaucrat in the entire government, 2 top cabinet ministers. Are there more to come? Do you think there's more that should be removed?
Well, certainly the Prime Minister is the one person evading responsibility for this. He's also the one person that could shine complete light on this. Mr. Wernick got to testify twice before the Justice Committee, and now he leaves and he can go into his private life. Ms. Wilson-Raybould hasn't been allowed to appear a second time. The Prime Minister won't allow that, and she's trying to stay on in her role as an MP from Vancouver and to do her parliamentary function that she was elected to do. The Prime Minister should allow her at least a second chance, like he allowed several other of his officials. She should be given the right to speak tomorrow at Justice Committee, and if not, it is a cover-up. And they're hoping to go on with the budget and just turn the channel. But as you said, everyone else is taking responsibility. Mr. Wernick's ending on a sour note to a long career. Mr. Butts, two prominent ministers have resigned. The Prime Minister should let her speak tomorrow, or perhaps we won't let him turn the page and do this budget until he stops the cover-up.
Pamela, I mean, they make an interesting argument there. Should Jody Wilson-Raybould be allowed to come back and answer questions that have arisen since her first testimony?
My understanding of the reason why Michael Wernick had a second chance was because it was after the Prime Minister made the exceptional decision of waiving Ms. Wilson-Raybould's solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidence.
He didn't seem to do much.
Well, it
gave
Michael Wernick a chance to answer questions in that same context, which I think was broadening. Nobody was tossed out in this situation. Honorable people like our colleagues, former Minister Wilson-Raybould and former Minister Philpott, chose to resign and stay in the Liberal government and commit to running again and continue to work on improving our democratic institutions, which we can get to later, of course, with the appointment of Dan McClellan.
Don, you know you're not going to get this through the committee tomorrow, right?
Well, you never know, but it's funny. Pam's point, I think, is the very point why Jody Wilson-Raybould should be allowed to come back, and that is, I know Aaron's a lawyer. I'm a lawyer as well. She was not allowed to testify fully. There were privilege was waived, but not completely. And when Jerry Butts came and testified after her, he did venture into areas that she was not permitted to go into, and that's why, if as Pam said, it's only fair that Mr. Wernick was allowed to come back after the Prime Minister raised new issues. That's exactly the situation with Jody Wilson-Raybould, and that's why she should come back. But overarchingly, it's to get at the truth, isn't it? Isn't that the main thing here? Don't Canadians deserve to have the entire truth?
Okay, I'm almost out of time, but I really want to get on the fact that Canada has extended Operation Impact in Iraq and actually tripled the troop count to about 850 till the end of March 2021, and it's extending the Ukraine mission to the end of March 2022. Aaron, you've got a military background. I'm curious, is Operation Impact having an impact in your view?
Well, both missions are originally conservative missions that were started by the last government. Impact is working with troops on the ground to really get rid of ISIS and the final remnants of Daesh in that part of the world. Remember, the second vote the Liberals had in the House of Commons was about pulling out the CF-18s, which were a component of Operation Impact. So they whittled down our commitment back then. They're beefing it up just before an election. And on Unifier, our mission with Ukraine, that's another conservative mission that we've been calling on, James Pizan, my colleague, for months to extend that mission. So we support both, but I ask Canadians to remember early on when France and our allies were asking all countries to step up with Operation Impact, only Justin Trudeau stepped back. Now an election's coming, he's suddenly doing more.
That is a complete misconstrual of what happened. I was the one on behalf of the Canadian government that signed the original $1.6 billion with Jordan for our enhanced military training and obviously humanitarian.
But did we pull back the F-18s? Yes, we did.
And now we are extending that to 2022. I spent all last week in Brussels, including the early days of the conference with the survivors from Syria. This is very much a part of our whole of government and international partners' approach to Syria.
What's the rationale for going to 850 from 250 now?
We are committed, as you can see, and we are concerned that it continues to be a horrific challenge for the world in terms of what is going on in that part of the world. And so we are not about to abandon our Syrians, obviously.
Well, they're making it a NATO partial mission now. So it's changed, but it's pre-election, I think.
It's continuing, and it's strong.
Okay, last word to you, Don. Does this mission get the NDP's support? Is this worth doing?
Well, certainly on Ukraine, we've been long calling for the government to commit to filling the gap and ensure that there is no gap of troops in Ukraine. We're committed to building the democratic institutions in Ukraine and ensuring that Ukraine has the security that they deserve. And on Iraq, we're still sort of evaluating what the mission is going to be. But in this time of intolerance around the world, I think there's an appetite on all countries' behalf to do what we can to make sure that those who would create violence to take away people's rights are dealt with appropriately.
Out of time. Thank you all for coming in. Aaron O'Toole, sorry about that. My goodness. All right, it's Monday. All right.